workers to the EMS workers? And secondly, you're calling for a fourth package, but Senator McConnell has said he's not interested in it. Nancy Pelosi told me today she's already ready and working on it. What would you say to the Republican leadership and to the White House about the need for a fourth package?
Well, let me start at the front end. I have a son-in-law. Ashley's husband is a surgeon up in Philadelphia, one of the big hospitals. And I talk to him every day with other healthcare providers and experts. And he was telling about a friend of his up in New York who said he just had 2 young men die on his table. One was, I think, 26 years old, and I think a marathoner, don't hold me to that, in great shape. Another was 28 years old. This is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And there's a real sense of panic that's occurring around the country and among some, I won't say panic, but great concern among healthcare providers and first responders. So, number one, we're in a situation where the president, as I was coming down to this makeshift studio, I was told by a staff member that the president says he's going to fully implement the Defense Production Act now. And so I said, great. And I stayed a second, as I was a few minutes later, I said, what'd he say? And I read the statement. It's all about ventilators, which is really important and should have been done 4 weeks ago. But he should employ that Defense Production Act for all the things needed: gloves, masks, face shields, gowns, etc. That should be done yesterday, last week, a month ago. Get it done now. And for example, tests. We're in a situation where we have tests that are not being distributed, number one, because there's no one person, no commander in the White House or the administration like a military commander determining distribution of what is available. And we have to be using the Defense Production Act to get companies who have the capacity to gather all the materials needed for the test, assemble them, and move now. Use your full authority. This is a war. Act like a commander-in-chief. Use it all. And so I'm a little worried that that has not been expanded. And the healthcare workers, and I watch your interviews and everyone else's interviews on TV, and there's so many examples of these. I watched last night a young doctor saying how frightened he was to go into the room, but he said he thought about how soldiers go in, and so why didn't he have more courage? He's going to do it, but it's frightening to go in, and people are really worried. Let's get on the job of providing what is needed. You asked the third part of your question related to whether or not, what was the third part of your question, actually? You asked 3 pieces.
Sorry, it was the question about whether or not a fourth package could be done.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
If the majority leader in the Senate is saying no.
Well, the majority leader of the Senate was wrong and slow the first time around, and he's wrong and slow this time around. Look, more has to happen. There is no possibility that the monies that provided to try to just get this under control are going to be enough to deal with the aftermath, both economically and in terms of the health of the country. We need to do more, which I'll be speaking to, and so I'm going to talk to the president about if he takes my call, if that gets set up. We need another package. There's a lot of people that are going to be left behind. There's a lot of holes we're going to find, as well-intended as the legislation was, that didn't get covered. For example, you have students out there with significant student debt. They're now in 3 cycles. They had 9 of this generation, from this one that are 18 years old all the way to the people in their early 30s. Look what they've gone through. They've gone through 9/11. They went through the economic downturn. They went through what we're going through now, and it's put them behind the 8 ball. We can't make the same mistakes. We know what we have to do. We should be examining what are we going to do to plan to make sure that the next virus is begin to prepare for it now, or if this comes back, if it rebounds. So there's so much we have to do. Social Security recipients should be getting another $200 to $300 in their paychecks now, in their Social Security checks now. They need the help now. So there's a whole range of things that are fully within our capacity, and we should be focusing on what we have to do about it now, in my view. And I think you're going to find, I predict to you, that no matter what Mitch says, he's going to be back handling another package. The idea that they're going to be, this is the end of it, I will be dumbfounded if that occurs and disappointed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you.
Great. Our next question comes from Bill Barrow from AP.
Right. Yes, Mr. Vice President. Senator Sanders is kind of making a new push, regardless of the gap between you two and delegates, to try to bring the conversation back to Medicare for all, saying that this scenario proves the private sector can't meet this kind of demand. Can you restate, like, why is it that you are still coming at this saying that the public option is the better model to get more people covered and more people care?
If you had the Medicare for all option now, it still has to be implemented by the federal government. Look, here's the point. The idea that this would have stopped the virus from occurring, the idea it would have been able to be implemented earlier, the idea it would have fundamentally changed anything is just not accurate. And besides, you got to pass what is a $35 trillion bill over the next 10 years, mildly complicated at the same time here. And so what we should be doing is having the Affordable Care Act, add the public option for those who want it, meaning Medicare, if that's what they want, rather than keep their own health insurance policies. If you notice, it's not about whether or not the health insurance is available to people that have private insurance. It's not about that. Now it's about whether or not the government is going to be able to implement all the things that they're supposed to be doing. And so I don't see where Medicare for all would make any difference in terms of the speed with which and the recovery rate which would occur if, in fact, it existed.
Do you have any concern that Bernie's push on this could confuse the issue and kind of take people's eye off the ball as you see it?
No, I don't. Look, I think, Senator Sanders is passionate about this. He believes it to every fiber in his being, and I respect him for that. I just disagree with him.
Great. The next question is from Jessica Dean from CNN.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Thanks for taking my question.
Happy to.
You mentioned your potential call with President Trump, and I'm curious, how close do you think you are to making that happen? And how confident are you that this could actually be a productive conversation, that he would take any advice, that he's open to so many of the plans that you've laid out?
Well, just taking Kellyanne Conway at her word, she said the president, why am I not suggesting what should be done? I laid out a 19-point plan, some of which was accepted, some was rejected. When I laid it out, I said that I think there's things that the president can use early on from the experience we had before and take a look at it. And if he did, I wasn't going to be out there saying he took my idea. It's a matter of the president doing what can most effectively get things done now. And but I don't know. All I know is that in the conversations in the past, it's been a long time I've had with them. They've been respectful. They've been straightforward. And I'm not doing this to criticize. I'm doing this to say this is what I think you should do. For example, on the Defense Production Act, I would strongly recommend the president move beyond just ventilators. Beyond just ventilators. He has the capacity to do that. I think it would not be unusual to suggest, maybe they're already thinking of doing it, having one commander-in-chief, one person in charge of making sure the allocation of all the equipment that's needed for protective gear is under the control of one person so they all know where it's going, just like if it were a war, just like what happens in a wartime. And we've talked, the president says he's a wartime president. This is a war against this virus. There's a number of specific suggestions that I know from in the past worked, and some I think would work. And I'm prepared to offer them to the president. I understand if he doesn't want to take my advice, but it won't be, I told you so, Mr. President. It won't be if he decided to do what I suggested, I go back and say, well, I told the president to do that. This is beyond politics right now. I mean, the projections that I get in the morning when I speak to the docs that I work with could be really dire. We're talking about a lot of people potentially dying. And we're now leading the world in the number of cases. And we've got to act more swiftly, more rapidly. And, you know, we've been through this in a slightly different way in the past. And I hope they could learn some lessons from what we did right and maybe what we did wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Trevor Honeycutt from Reuters.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. So my question is about the Wisconsin primary and whether you think it's still appropriate to have in-person voting there, considering the fact that the Democratic National Convention has been pushed back and public health officials say it's important to stay home this time.
Well, the answer is I listen to the scientists. A convention having tens of thousands of people in one arena is very different than having people walk into a polling booth with accurate spacing to 6 to 10 feet apart, one at a time, going in and have machines scrubbed down. But I do think there are going to be a lot more. I think you could hold the election as well, dealing with mail-in ballots and same-day registration. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done. That's for the Wisconsin courts and folks to decide. But I think it's possible to do both, to have both more mail-in ballots. People, and today is the last day, I guess, till 5 o'clock to ask for one. It was an hour time difference from where I am in Wisconsin. And I think it could be done based on what I've been hearing from the news and what I understand the governor and others are saying. But that's for them to decide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We really appreciate it. As always, if you have any further questions, please reach out to our press team and we will get back to you. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks for taking the time, everyone. Appreciate it very much.